Right. One of the most controversial religious figures of both antiquity and today is that of Lilith. Now, she is understood by many different identities, dependent upon the culture and the era, as she frequently evolves from one kind of being to another. For the Sumerians and the Babylonians, Lilith was the daughter of heaven, closely associated with the goddess Inanna, right? While for the Assyrians and early Israelites, she was primarily a water elemental spirit. By the time we get to the 8th to 10th century CE, Lilith evolves into Adam's first wife, arising from the very same dust as Adam when she was created, in contrast to being fashioned from Adam's rib, as was the case with Eve. Yet Lilith will abandon Adam for the Archangel Samuel, right? Lilith will also be depicted in ancient and medieval Jewish literature as everything from a monster and a serpent to a succubus, draining away the life force of unsuspected men as they sleep. But of course, this talk is going to be pretty interesting in the sense that I'm going to take the evidence chronologically. So as the evidence appears, that is the time where I will discuss Lilith and her significance. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go, and that means, and we have to be very careful here, that means is that certain ideas may have dated earlier than the time that I mentioned them. You following? But I'm mentioning them at the time they first appear. So it doesn't mean that certain ideas didn't exist before, but I think the chronological approach is the best in the academic sense. So we're going to go back to the time of the ancient Sumerians, right? So the Sumerian word, well, first of all, we have to mention the fact that Lilith, we have to look at the name, Lilith, and the Sumerian word Lil, using our letters, L-I-L, the word means air. That's what Lil means. It means air. So when we refer to, for example, the god by the name of Enlil, right, the Sumerian Lord, the word Lord is En, and of course, he is Lord of the Lil, of the air. So he is Enlil, Lord of the air. So it does mean air at first. The oldest known term, which we might suggest relates to Lilith, would be the plural word lily. Of course, it could also the feminine Lilith too, which was simply a Sumerian generic word, for the word spirit. In fact, it was quite common in ancient languages for the same word for air or breath to be used for spirit, as the spirit was thought to be the evidence of life, spirit of the person. Embodied spirits, therefore, were themselves composed of the same substance. The very word spiritus is one such example, Latin for breath. The Hebrew word rauch, right, is another such example. This suggests, therefore, that the Sumerian Lilith were either a specific kind of demon or were just simply spirits in general. You guys follow this, right? Now, there is evidence also that she was also called Ninlel. Now, Ninlel means lady air. So Nin is lady, Lil is air, who was the goddess of the south wind, as well as the wife, guess of whom? Enlil, right? And it was also known as connected with the moon, Itut, with this sense, of course, this, you can see there's a connection between Enlil, this god, and Lilith. I told you this is going to be pretty technical at first, but we got to establish these ideas right away. Now, here we go. And this is something that you do want to hear because there's lots of confusion here. Okay. Later on, after the time of the Sumerians, when the Akkadians arrive, these are Semitic people, into Mesopotamia, specifically under Sargon the Great, the name changes. Okay, so Lil-la-ke now stands for Lilith, and even though it's referred to in the Sumerian tradition as spirit demon, it conflates with a Semitic word, which is, of course, El, which means night. So as a result, the name morphs and means a nocturnal female night being or spirit. You guys following that? So originally, right, Lilith, the word in the Sumerian, right, is connected to air, but because of the resemblance of that word, when the Akkadians arrive, when these Semitic people arrive, they hear this word and they make a connection to the word night because of a similar root in the Semitic language. And a lot of scholars get this mixed up because they say, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. The answer is it's both. It evolves. Now, we got that established. Just getting through the name itself can be complicated. Now, according to a work, Sumerian work known as Gilgamesh and the Netherworld, Inanna planted a willow tree in her garden in Uruk. This is called a huluppu tree, Huluppu, that she later intended to make a new throne from its wood. Now, story goes basically as follows. Once upon a time, the story goes is that when the separation of sky and earth occurred, a violent south wind from a storm uprooted this tree, and Inanna rescued it and planted it in her sacred grove in Uruk. Now, many people say, what is this tree? What does it mean? What is its significance? It seems that this tree is connected to the world tree, the ancient archetype, the idea of this tree that connects the heavens, the earth, and the underworld together, right? Now, Inanna declares, quote, I brought it to my holy garden. I tended the tree, waiting for my shining throne and bed. So she intends to turn the world tree into furniture. Okay, so there you have it. Well, 10 years later, when Inanna was ready to cut down the tree to make into her throne and to her bed, she discovers 3 creatures had settled into this particular tree. And it goes as follows. I'm just reading from the text. Then a serpent, not be charmed, made its nest in the roots of the tree. The undu bird set his young in the branches of the tree, and the dark-made Lilith built her home in the trunk. So we see that the tree is now has 3 occupants, right? There is a serpent at the root, right? You've got an undu bird at the top, and then in the middle, you have this dark maid, this Lilith, right? It continues, I wept, how I wept, yet they would not leave my tree, says Inanna. Since, accordingly, the snake, which fears no spell, that means that Inanna can't get rid of the snake, Inanna asks her brother Utu, who's the sun god, to help, but he refuses. So she calls upon Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is also known as Gilgamesh, right, to slay the serpent. And he does so. The story continues. Gilgamesh fastened his armor of 50 minas around his chest. The 50 minas weighed as little to him as 50 feathers. He lifted his bronze axe, the axe of the road, weighing 7 talents and 7 minas to his shoulder. He entered Inanna's holy garden. Gilgamesh struck the serpent who could not be charmed, unquote. It's very interesting. So Gilgamesh is able to do what Inanna could not. This is interesting. And I do want to say that there's something interesting about Gilgamesh. There is an early reference to a demon that's similar to Lilith and was a companion of that was of Gilgamesh's father, who was known as Lilu. So there could be some connection here. Who knows, right? Now, again, we talked about the idea of the world tree, right? You see that the concept of the world tree is everywhere. You can even see this in Mesoamerica or North America. And they oftentimes have monsters and serpents at the base, and they oftentimes have birds at the top. So it's interesting to see these connections. Now, let's go a little bit deeper because the full word that is used in this text is ki, selki, li, la, ki. And this is that which made its home within the trunk of the tree. In response to the impending threat, this Lilith, as we heard, destroys its own home and then sets off for the forest. While many translate the word li, la, ki as owl, because of its placement within the trunk of the tree, because, owls habitually occupy trunks. A lot of scholars will say, well, a better translation is simply a spirit, and even better still, water spirit by this period of time that is connected to the night, the nocturnal aspect. So you can see that this Lilith then originally connected to the element of the air is now connected to the element of water, and perhaps best both. Now, of course, this is the first reference to Lilith. That's around 2000 BCE. And many aspects that would later be associated with her are already inferred. First, of course, you see this association of Lilith with the snake. And sometimes the snake is referred to or connected to the idea of craftiness, of wisdom, the positive side of the scale, and of course, with evil in the Judeo-Christian conception. Second, now there is the bird who flees. And of course, it's presumed that Lilith will also later fly from the scene as well. So she is the one who is always in motion. She's always in flight. And so, she's able to fly. So the association with wings that we see Lilith later on. A third, the tree does invoke the idea of the tree of knowledge, which we see that Lilith seems to be very much properly placed, right? And so, and she is not only in this tree, but this tree is in Inanna's holy garden. And come on, we can't help but connect that to the idea of, the Garden of Eden, right? So you're seeing that here, right? Finally, of course, it is noteworthy that while Lilith and her companions inspire fear in Inanna, they do not have a fear of her. There is no fear of Lilith, right? Now, of course, Gilgamesh here is the superhero who kills the snake and frightens the other creatures out of the tree and garden. So in this sense, Inanna is portrayed as ineffectual to these three creatures and what they represent, and requires this assistance. But who is Lilith? Who is she, right? So there is a few other stories. There's another story where Lil Laki, uh, in the story of another story, somehow relates to Nin Lel. Nin Lel. We talked about that before, right? The Lady of the Air, right? She can be known as Lady Air, she can be known as Lady of the Wind or Lady of the Open Field, who was the wife of Enlil. There seems to be an early connection between that. And there is a nice, very interesting myth that is so important for us to study. It's the myth of Enlil and Ninlil. Aren't you glad I'm the one trying to say these words? Enlil and Ninlil. Okay. The begetting of Nana, right? This is a Sumerian creation myth dating from the mid to late third millennium. It's discovered at the Temple Library of Nippur, translated in 1918, right? Been around for a little while. The story begins describing the city of Nippur, which is presented as the abode of the gods, right? One of the inhabitants of this heavenly Nippur before the founding of the world was Ninlel. He lived here. Now, what happens accordingly is that Enlil was one of its young men of the inhabitants of this heavenly city, and Ninlel was one of its young women. Now, the goddess by the name of Nunbar Sigunu is then introduced, depicted as warning. Her daughter, Ninlel, about Enlil. Enlil is the bad guy. He's the bad boy. You got to stay away from him. Don't hang around Enlil. He's all a bunch of hot air. That joke. And especially his intentions towards her, which were not exactly respectful, and told her to not stray close to the river. Apparently, Enlil liked to hang out in the river area, which is the bad side of town of the heavenly city, perhaps, right? Enlil tried to resist Enlil's first approach, trying to show that she was not interested. And after which, he entreats his minister, Nuska, to take him across the river on the other side. And so that the couple could meet and they could float downstream. Either, sometimes the text is hard to figure out what it says, either they're bathing going downstream or they're in a boat at this point. We know he crosses the boat over to the other side to, get together with her. But we're not sure what happens when they start to travel down. So I'm actually looking at the text right here. It's fun to try to interpret what it is here. But eventually, they lie on the bank together, and they kiss and conceive soon Akim Babar, the moon god. What a kiss can do, right? This is why you should not kiss, because you could conceive the moon god. Well, all right. The story then gets to Enlil walking about where the other gods arrest him. Told you this is going to be an interesting story. And arrest him for the relationship with Enlil, and they exile him from the city for being ritually impure. Now, I hope you guys caught this, right? They're not married. This is an extra marital affair, right? She's supposed to be pure. She's supposed to listen to mama, right? Don't, hang around with the bad boy across the river. But it turned out that, she's pregnant with Moon God. And and he violated ritual purity, right? So what happens is, 50 great gods and 7 gods who decide destinies had Enlil arrested. As I said, Enlil was ritually impure. He must leave the city, and accordingly, he was thrown out. Well, where else do you go but to the underworld? It's kind of, not a lot of options here. Heavenly city, not so heavenly city. And that's pretty much what happened. He starts to go down. Now, this is where it gets really complicated. I'll have to explain this because hey, this is Mesopotamian mythology. So as he's going down into the underworld, he tells basically 3 of the guardians on the way down. He gives them a message. He gives a message to the keeper of the city gate, known as the keeper of the holy barrier, or the man of the pure luck. He gives a message to the guard known as Ikura, who guards the Sumerian river of the underworld, which is similar to the river Styx. And lastly, he gives a message to Sliugi, the underworld ferryman, who's similar to Pharaoh. What is that message as he's going down and down into the underworld? Well, the message is as follows. He says that when your lady Ninlel comes, if she asks after me, don't you tell her where I am. Okay, here it is. When your lady Ninlel comes, if she asks after me, don't you tell her where I am. Well, so you can guess what happens. Yes, Ninlel follows him. Yeah, asking each one, when did your Lord Ninlel go by on his way, down into the underworld? To this, they tell her, each one, my Lord has not talked with me at all, O loveliest one. Enlil has not talked to me at all. Upon which each one offers to have sex with them. You guys catch that one? And each time they conceive another god. So we're looking at, these 3 guardians on the way down into the underworld. And she has sex with each one of them. And with each one of them, she conceives another god. Apparently, when it comes to these gods, it's kind of instantaneous. There's no waiting around for 9 months. It's like kiss and woo, moon god. So, so this is what's happening here. So there's no crowding of the womb here. Right? They just there's no womb with a view. Okay, so what happens is they're on their way down, and so now you're going to have, of course, the various offsprings, as I mentioned before. But I do want to mention one more thing, is that each one of these spirits have the spirit of Enlil in them. What? I know. That's why it's taking my time. So even though they are in body different guardians and guides as you go down, each one is infused with the spirit of Enlil, who waits for her at the very bottom. You guys get that? So he's having a relationship with them, but she's also having a relationship with Enlil, because he's the spirit of the air after all, right? Okay, so the various gods, Enlil is, she gives birth with the gatekeeper to Nergal, the god of death, right? So there you have it. And then the river god, she's impregnated, and she gets impregnated by the man of the river of the netherworld, a man devouring river. And then, of course, she's also gets pregnant with the god of rivers and canals. So, there you have it. Okay, so now finally, okay, they meet together. Yay! We finally got that far. So what happens now is all of these act, because now she's made the way through via all the Enlils who are infused in all these guardians. Enlil waits at the bottom. But remember, there is that moon god she was first pregnant with. Remember that? Well, that moon god descended with Enlil down to the bottom. Now a passage has been made so that through this ritual, right, this sexual energy moving down, which through these guardians, which are infused with the spirit of Enlil, right, what happens is a pathway has been made for the moon to rise out of the underworld. And that's why the moon rises. That's kind of beautiful, right? And so a passage is made for the moon to rise up with Enlil, god of the air, rising in triumph with, of course, with Enlil. It is rather beautiful, right? And so you kind of have a happy ending, right? The story concludes, you are Lord, you are King, Enlil, you are Lord, you are King. And I mean, it's pretty good, right? You know, Lord who makes barley grow, Lord of heaven and plenty, and so forth, yada yada. And of course, praise was spoken for Enlil, the mother. Praise be to the great mountain, right? I mean, they're singing praises happily ever after. But you can see, you see that there is. She started off right, not too bad, right? Not doing too badly. So you're going to see, unfortunately, how everything goes downhill from here. Are you guys following that, right? So the Lilith aspect that we see in Enlil seems to be a pretty positive one, but but there is this sex concept, right? This is society in Mesopotamia prohibited premarital sex, sort of. uh, for those who are married, but not those who are not so much. And so you have. So what is this? Well, the idea is that what the gods and goddesses do are outside of human uh, of human understanding. Okay, and but beyond that, uh, there is an exception amongst the Sumerians, amongst the Babylonians, even get to the Assyrians, and that is the exception is what we understand as sex magic. In that case, that magic is done for the reasons of, well, of giving that energy that is made to nature, right? So the energy between male and female is released, and it's considered a holy energy that feeds creation and enacts various things. Well, you saw that, saw that directly in the story of the descent, right? Saw that. And so this is being stressed. Now, of course, the narrative concludes that it exonerates Enlil, that nature can have its way that moves beyond societal conventions, right? And so there is this outlet that is allowed, that's permitted. And you're thinking, are we at the Lilith yet? We've been talking about Lilith the whole time. We're talking about Lilith within this context. And you can see, if you guys know Lilith pretty well, you can see what aspects will now be distorted as time goes on, right? As opposed to positive sexuality, it moves into negative sexuality. As opposed to positive interactions for the feeding of nature, it becomes the idea of, hey, I have no choice, the succubus came around and I was sleeping. Are you guys getting this, right? So yes, there is a direct connection. So what will happen is that Lilith will be connected to ritual prostitution in Mesopotamia. The belief that this energy was able to manifest to the natural realm life-giving power and that it cannot be ignored, right? Of course, her death, as she dies, even though she's a goddess, Ninlel becomes the goddess of the wind, like Enlil. And she is connected to the south wind. Sound familiar? Referred to in the story of Adapa, as her husband Enlil was associated with the northerly winter storms. Okay, so there you have it. Now, we have a famous relief. It's called the Burnley Relief. It was named after its owner in 1936, Mr. Sidney Burney, that gives that has been associated with Lilith. This is the very popular one that you oftentimes see with their arms out and so forth. I do want to say that it's made out of terracotta. It's 50 by 37 centimeters. We realized that it was originally painted a red overall, even the wings, although the wings alternated between red and black. That's the pubic triangle and the area were accented with red pigment. So you have that. But basically, it is a nude figure, realistically sculpted in high relief. Her eyes beneath are very distinct. They have joined eyebrows. And presumably there was something that was inlaid in those eyes at one time, possibly alabaster, right? Her lips are full, slightly upturned at the corners. So it does look like she is smiling. And that's important for us to remember later on. She's adorned with a four-tiered headdress of horns, topped with a disc. Her head is framed by two braids of hair, with the bulk of her hair placed into a bun in the back. I don't know why I'm indicating that. There's, of course, two wedge-shaped braids extending onto her breasts. The stylized treatment of her hair could represent a ceremonial wig. Many people have thought that this is just a lot of hair, you know. She wears a single broad necklace composed of squares that are structured in a horizontal, with horizontal and vertical lines. So, possibly depicting beads, maybe, possibly. Around both wrists, she wears bracelets, which appear composed of 3 rings. She has 2 wings, which are clearly defined, stylized feathers in 3 registers, which extend above her shoulders. Her wings are not fully extended, but she does have wings. She does have bird feet, right? Very detailed, with 3 well-separated toes of approximately equal length. There are owls that are connected to her. They're very recognizable. They're not very realistic at all. And so you can see that she is definitely a goddess, but it does look like there's a combination here of various themes, amalgamation of both Inanna and Lilith, right? So you have Inanna's rod and ring, and the Shugura crown, for example, in the lions. But you also have Lilith's draped wings, her frontal nakedness, her owl feet, and the horned crown. So it is a combination. It's Lilith, Inanna, right? Interestingly enough, the rod and the ring have various interpretations. Sometimes it is connected to, the rod and ring is connected to the idea of surveying. It may be connected to the idea of kingship. They're known as a Miku and Puku. But also, many have suggested that the ring and the stick might refer to the female or male principles. It's possible, but we don't know. Now, Lilith II's association with Inanna is found in many other Sumerian and Babylonian accounts. One, of course, is called the Handmaiden of Inanna. Another, we find here that Lilith, like Inanna, was considered very beautiful. Lilith was actually described as a, quote, beautiful maiden. So early on, Lilith is beautiful, very beautiful. But Lilith was also described as a perpetual maiden, always a maiden, for her breasts were always barren of milk, as was her womb eternally barren of any child. In fact, an early aspect of Lilith is that she could not bear children. Now, like Inanna, Lilith was connected to ritual of prostitution, as we discussed, inspiring sexual activity with men so that the resulting union would bring about fertility magic, directing this energy towards fields and animals. One Sumerian text states as follows: Inanna has sent the beautiful, unmarried, and seductive prostitute Lilith out into the fields and streets in order to lead men astray. Lilith only inspired sexual activity amongst the unmarried, those who were often strangers to one another. She was not about human reproduction either. For these unions, it was not about having a child. In fact, that was improper to procreate with a maiden that's connected with Lilith. No, 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 no. The energy is not connected to the womb. It's connected to the life of animals and the fields and so forth. And you can see how that will change into the idea of Lilith being, a problem when it comes to children. See how it's like telephone. Ideas become exaggerated through time. I hope you feel like you're getting to know Lilith a little bit more as we're going through this, and how you can see she's going to change as time goes on. Lilith is often described as having been a Sumerian succubus. There were those known as the Ardut Lily, who are affiliated with a Lilith aspect. The word Ardutu was a term that describes a young woman of married age. Thus, the Ardut Lily were sexually active female spirits, and so they could be the equivalent of the succubi. It was believed that these night demonesses were the ones who did cause erotic dreams by which they robbed the male of semen and spiritual vitality. Of course, there is also a male version of this entity, the incubus. So they have both. So we also have this aspect within Sumerian beliefs. It is also interesting to note that the Sumerian word for wantonness was lilu, and that which is luxurious was lalu in Sumerian. So you got to keep note of these roots. Unlike others who often viewed as lower spirits or demons, the magical incantations specifically call her daughter of heaven. So Lilith is understood as a daughter of heaven. This made her unique, for she did good or harm out of her free will, not by preordained designations, as was the case with the demon, the Lamashtu. So she had free will. This is another really important aspect to decide whether or not she does good or bad from our perspective. It's unusual. That's because she is connected to the heavens, not quite an earthbound demon. So we have to, right. For those living in ancient Mesopotamia, inclusive of the Sumerians, Akkadians, and the Assyrians, the spirits who were viewed as ultimately subordinate to the high gods like Anu and Enki were called the Shidu and the Lamashu. These spirits are depicted as hybrids, typically with a human head, a lion or bull body, and having wings. They could act either as good or evil, depending on the Shidu, and sometimes a little of both, but they did not have free will. Right? The Shidu Lamashtu, as beneficial, were depicted as guardians that protect people and houses and temples. Oftentimes their images were buried under the door's threshold, keeping the evil spirits and evil people influenced by them out of the household. In grander residences and palaces, the Shedu Lamashtu were carved as a pair of guardians flanking the entrance. Sometimes these were pretty grand in scale, and many of you have seen these in various museums of the, of course, the other Sidhu or Lamashtu were harmful. They were known to have great powers that are worth fearing. For example, the demon known as Pazuzu, images of Pazuzu, also simply known as Zoo, yes, a nickname, right, are everywhere to be found within the material culture, right? Pazuzu has a face of a dog with bulging eyes, the sharp talons and wings of a bird, and a scaly body, scorpion tail, snake-headed penis. Watch out for that. Pazuzu was believed to be the demon of the southwest wind. As an evil spirit, he is the one who took the tablets of Enlil's destiny and was killed because of this. He's the one who brought about diseases that have no cure connected to pestilence. Yet with Pazuzu, a spirit often viewed as evil could act to do good actions. In fact, there's another tradition that's interesting in Mesopotamia that Pazuzu is believed to be able to have the power to ward off the southwest and west wind. As an evil spirit, Pazuzu still could be called upon to attack other evil spirits for the greater benefit of humanity. So Pazuzu was oftentimes invoked to fight against Lamashtu. So, evil against evil. Have you guys ever seen The Exorcist? Right? That's Pazuzu, right? So there is this idea of, the beat of the bad guys. Sometimes you'll have to use bad guys to fight the even bigger bad guys. So, okay. Lamashtu, this demoness has a head of a lioness, donkey's teeth and ears, very hairy body, long fingers, and bird feet with long talons. Pretty attractive. She's oftentimes nursing a dog or a pig. Yeah, that. You ever see something like that? That's Lamashtu. Sure, we see that all the time nowadays. Maybe that's the thrill of 2021. Okay, so moving right along, but joking aside, she's often poised to attack the unborn, newly born, or nursing infants. We got to know this now, all right? Making threats to new mothers. So we're going to see now the Lamashtu aspect will eventually connect to the Lilith aspect. You guys getting this? The Lamashtu aspect will eventually connect to the Lilith aspect. Yet we're almost there, right? So accordingly, with the Lamashtu, she, as I mentioned, she threatens mothers. She typically gnaws on their bones, and she sucks their blood. Able to touch the woman's pregnant belly 7 times, she will miscarriage. To stop her from doing so, women often wore amulets to protect their bellies. And sometimes this image was of bronze, and it's sometimes the head of Pazuzu, her arch nemesis, right? She also enjoys slaying men and drinking their blood. Sounds like a good time had by all. Still, with this said, even the typically evil Lamashtu is used as a magic to heal. Why? Because once again, it's the idea that you take the bad guys and who fight the even bigger bad guys. Let them fight amongst themselves. I actually have right here a spell, a protective spell that uses Lamashtu, and why not? I'll go ahead and read it. This is a spell to get rid of lasting fever. Basically, it says this prescribed ritual involves Lamashtu figurine. You gotta get that. Sacrifice of bread must be placed before the figure, and water must be poured over it. Then a black dog must be made to carry the figurine. Then it is placed near the head of a sick child for 3 days. with the heart of a piglet placed in its mouth. Right? The incantation must be recited 3 times a day, besides further food sacrifices. Then at dusk on the third day, the figure is taken outdoors and buried near the wall. There you have it. I'm not going to go ahead and read the spell. It's wrong. But you get the idea of how it operated. Right? So she was used for good as well. But Lilith was different. Lilith, she could do good or evil as a result of her own free will, and was opposed to being harnessed as some magical tool. She didn't like that too much. She produced by inspiring sexual activity, and this, of course, affected the life of plants and animals. But just as quickly, she could change her mind and take life away. She, yeah, so she could, in a sense, give life and take it away. You know, she seduced men to have sex for the natural energy to perpetuate life, but she would also harm women about to give birth. She could kill a baby if she wishes, but the surviving incantations make it clear that she could also, get this, save babies too. If she desired, she could cause sickness and death and even kill plants. She could reverse and of course, bring them back as well. In a sense, already by the time of the Sumerians and Babylonians, Lilith was understood as a very unpredictable, free agent, neither quite god or demon, but hovering somewhere in the realm of in between. She was definitely used for fertility magic in a positive way, but not for human fertility magic. But she could also do the opposite, right? Because of her liminal nature, Lilith would take on attributes of even the iconography, not only of Inanna, but Ereshkigal, the goddess of the land of the dead and the underworld, right? There's some certain characteristics that are in common, but you kind of saw that already before. But now we get to the Assyrians. I'm glad we had a little time to really investigate her early on. By the time of the Assyrians, things start going downhill. The Lilith were more and more collective demons, right? Associated with storms and disease and lions in the desert. They were also known to fall upon women and children. One amulet from Arslan Tash contains an incantation against Lilith with an image showing a sphinx-like creature with wings devouring a child. Another incantation describes her as follows. It says, the space between her legs is as a scorpion, corresponding to the astrological sign of Scorpio. So the Scorpio rules the genitals and sex organs, right? Her head is that of a lion. She has Andu bird feet like Lilith. Her breasts are suckled by a pig and a dog, and she rides the back of a donkey. She is described as the 7 enchantresses or 7 witches. Already you're getting this association by the time of the Assyrians. We're going chronologically. Yet Lilith was also worshipped still during the time of the Assyrians, around the 7th century BCE, and even into the Neo-Babylonian period. And it was part of what's called the Shedham Cult, Sheddim. And this cult was also evident in Israel. Oh, here we go. You guys ready for this? So during the Neo-Babylonian period, you're tracking here, you have the Shedham cult that is still worshiping Lilith. And this idea is spreading and it's crossing over into the area of Israel. The Shedham were basically elemental demons associated with water, often known as storm gods. Jewish stories concerning their origins include the belief that they arose from demons, but they took on the form of serpents. In fact, there's a story where God made their spirits, but he didn't give them bodies. And so they had to find these spirit bodies, which turned out to be serpents, right? So now we have the Lilith, the ideas entering into Jewish conceptions. And so we enter into the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible itself will definitely have the word Lilith or Lilith in Isaiah 34:14. It mentions them. And I got to tell you, these translators translate it every way possible. They don't know how to translate it. I mean, I'm looking through the various descriptions. Night creatures, night monster for the word Lilith, night hag, screech owl. I mean, so many variations, right? Night jar? A night jar? Really? No. Okay. That's the 1984 New World Translation, right? Where the night jar, the night devil. They're obviously, there's a lot of bias here. Smart Bible translators will simply call them Lilith. Maybe it's best to leave it untranslated if you just can't get it even close. But there you have it. So the Lilith doesn't really go into its significance. It just seems to be not so positive, right? Um, and that's it. Then, of course, we go into the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, they appear, Lilith does appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jewish Dead Sea Scrolls, within a list of monsters. So now we know they're understood as monsters. And so, um, and I, the instructor, proclaim his glorious splendor so as to frighten and terrify all the spirits of the destroying angels, spirits of the bastards, demons, Lilith, howlers, and desert dwellers, and those which fall upon men without warning to lead them astray from the spirit of understanding and to make their heart and there's, of course, break them. So we have this akin to Isaiah 34:14 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a liturgical text that both cautions against the presence of supernatural malevolence and assumes very much a familiarity with Lilith, right? So we have that here. We'll go ahead. He is, of course, help protect the faithful against the power of these spirits. And we have some other stories here. There's so many. The Lilith tradition within the Dead Sea Scrolls. You have, of course, one where the Lilith is a description of a precarious woman known as the seductrix. This ancient poem was from the 1st century BCE. It describes a dangerous woman and consequently warns against encounters with her, right? And she's also depicted as a strange woman, which is oftentimes connected to Proverbs 2 and 5. In fact, Proverbs 2 says, her house sinks down to death, and her house leads to the shades. All who go to her cannot return and find again the path of life. Meanwhile, the Dead Sea Scroll says about her, her gates are gates of death, and from the entrance of the house, she goes out towards Sheol. None of those who enter there will ever return, and all who possess her will descend to the pit. So you're getting this identity now of Lilith in connection to the underworld. Of course, we know that it was of the overworld. So she's moving from the heavens within the Sumerian tradition, Neo-Babylonian tradition, kind of heavens, but still moving into the realm of the earth. And now she's getting associated with the underworld. So things are definitely changing pretty quick. We have also descriptions of her. She now has horns, and she's acquired wings, right? So she's gaining that. In the Testament of Solomon, from 200 BCE to 200 CE, we have more references to Lilith. And I do want to explore this a little bit more. Here we go. Talks about, no, she goes, this is Lilith, also goes by the name of Obizuth, Obizuth, but she later on is revealed as Lilith. And it goes as follows. Lilith reveals herself. And it says, Solomon says, I, Solomon, did she enjoin me and strain myself because of the wisdom dwelling in me, in order that I might hear of her deeds and apprehend them and manifest them to men. I sat down and said to the demon, who are thou? And she said, I am called amongst men Obizuth, and by night I sleep not, but go my rounds over all the world and visit women in childbirth. And divining the hour, I take my stand, and if I am lucky, I strangle the child. If not, I retire to another place, for I cannot a single night retire unsuccessful. I am a fierce spirit of a myriad of names and of many shapes. Now hither, now thither I roam, and to western parts I go my rounds. But as it now is, though thou hast sealed me round with the ring of God, thou hast done nothing. I am not standing before thee, and thou wilt not be able to command me, for I have no work other than the destruction of children and the making of their ears to be deaf, and the workings of evil to their eyes, and the binding of their mouths with a bond, and the ruin of their minds, and the painting of their bodies. When I, Solomon, heard this, I marveled at her appearance, for I beheld all her body to be in darkness, but her glance was altogether bright and cheery. What? Bright and cheery. And her hair was tossed wildly like a dragon's, and the whole of her limbs were invisible. Bright and cheery? Remember the smile that you saw in the earlier Lilith image? She's known for her smile all the way through time. She still has also retained that beauty that she had from the earlier times. That has not yet changed. She is still considered wild, and her hair is bound eventually in submission, right? Of course, you're going to see the importance of Lilith's hair in the Talmud, which will play an important role, right? So Lilith is used as a lesson, basically for those people who have sinned in a sexual way. So always an object lesson, but we're still getting a lot of material of the old Lilith as she unfortunately continues to dwindle. You can see also she is understood now as child destroying, and so now you're going to start seeing various in archaeology, various objects, amulets meant to ward her off, to protect babies from her power. Now we move on to the Talmud, 200 to 500 CE. Wow, we're making some progress, aren't we? We're going through time. You didn't think we got this far, huh? Okay, so we look at the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, and story goes, for example, she does have wings. The Talmud states as follows: if an abortion has the likeness of Lilith, its mother is unclean by reason of birth. It is a child, but it has wings, so it was also taught. It's kind of interesting. It continues. It says, in fact, it mentions that it once mentioned that a woman aborted the likeness of a Lilith, and it did have indeed wings. But what's interesting about this is it mentions the abortion as a common practice. Don't tell anybody. I It'll just be a fun, controversial topic. Now everybody's going to be moving to the Talmud. Okay, moving right along, you also have Lilith is also described as having very long hair. In one section, it says, she grows long hair like Lilith, sits when making water like a beast, and serves as a bolster for her husband. And we know what that means, where she means making water like a beast. She's going potty. Okay. Also, according to the Talmud, in connection with lust, Lilith was already known to seduce and have sex with men in the Talmud. It goes as follows: one may not sleep in a house alone, in a lonely house, and whoever sleeps in a house alone is seized by Lilith. So you better get married, because Lilith will be after you. All right. Perhaps you're probably learning way too much information. Isn't that why you came here today, right? Okay. You can see that Lilith becomes this projection of the negative fears and desires of the rabbis who depicted her, right? It's a nice excuse. It's all Lilith's fault, right? Yeah, she's the cause, right? All right. So now we move into, of course, the Talmud does seem to talk about Lilith and Adam. Here it starts. Here's the origin of this. Talmud talks about the fact that it says, in all those years, 130 years after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden, during which time Adam was under the ban, which means that he is practicing chastity, he begot ghosts. And male demons and female demons, you get what's happening. And of course, this impregnation arrives from Lilith. The upshot of it is this, is that, supposedly because what happened to the Garden of Eden, Adam is not hanging around Eve anymore. And so he's declared celibacy. Well, after, of course, Seth, right? And so, but apparently Lilith, unbeknownst to him, has been interacting with him, making lots of male and female demons from his essence, his nocturnal missions. Is this making sense? So you already have, now you're going to see how this changes, of course. Now, by the way, the Talmud version of Lilith does resemble in many ways what we see of the Greek and Roman Lamia. So I'll just kind of throw this one in. Once upon a time, Lamia was the beautiful mistress of Zeus himself, but of course the jealous wife Hera slayed all of her children, right, except for Scylla, and turned her into a hideous demon who hunts and eats children, right? According to another story, Hera basically, when she took all her children, killed all her children, Lamia's children, made her lose her mind, and so that she began to kill and eat other children out of a sense of loss and envy. After a while, she turns into a demon due to her lowly, excessive, and obsessive behavior. She will eventually have the upper half of a woman and the lower half of the serpent. As for her eyes, Hera cursed her never to close them, but the good news is that she can remove them out of her skull, and there you have it. That was the good news. I hate to throw what the bad news happens to be. Okay, now, we also have more information. You guys ever heard of the Nippur books? These contain some of the most lengthy and explicit references to Lilith up to this point. Out of 40 bowls which were excavated, 26 mention the figure of Lilith. And at least 3 of these bowls contain sketches of Lilith as their central image. So they date around 500 to 600 CE. That's a current date that we have here for them. So these are special bowls, and they're worth taking a look at. As a whole, these have magical incantations against various forms of illnesses and demons. One which features Lilith gives enough information to provide a synopsis of how the more simple people viewed her. It appears that Lilith was regarded as a ghostly accompaniment of men and had a special danger for women during many periods of their sexual life cycle before they lost their virginity, during menstruation. A mother in the hour of childbirth and her newborn babe were especially vulnerable and therefore had to be protected from the Liliths. It would appear, therefore, that two of the strands of Lilith have joined together at this point, that she is now child slayer and succubus by the time we get to 500 to 600 BCE. Um, I, I guess I'm going to go ahead and read one here. In one of these, Lilith appears naked and wingless with long, loose hair, chained ankles, and prominent breasts, and strongly marked genitals. The text goes as follows. You are bound and sealed, all you demons and devils and Liliths, by that hard and strong and mighty powerful bond with which are tied Sison and Sisson, the evil Lilith who causes the hearts of men to go astray and appears in the dreams of the night and in the vision of the day, who burns and casts down with nightmares, attacks and kills children, boys and girls. She is conquered and sealed away from the house and from the threshold of Baram Kushnap son Ishtar Naid by the talisman of Metatron, the great prince who is called the great healer of mercy. And it goes on forever after that. You get the idea. By the 8th to 10th centuries, Lilith becomes known as Adam's wife. Now, I want to make it very clear, that these ideas could have occurred earlier. Just because I say they appear at this time doesn't mean they didn't exist earlier. Is this making sense? I want to make it very clear. I'm just giving you the documentation of when it appears, but a lot of things don't get written down until later on. They're part of the oral tradition, or we have lost so many documents from ancient times. But here it does appear. This is called the alphabet of Sirach, Sirach, around 700 to 1000 CE. It's anonymous work. The text, it seems to be a commentary. It tells the story of the conception, birth, and early education of a prophet by the name of Din Seta, right? The text begins kind of strange. It's a group of men who are masturbating in the bathhouse, and they're talking about what they consider serious topics, like farting, urinating, copulation of ravens and donkeys. Okay, so it doesn't begin very well. But of course, meanwhile, all of you are now Googling this alphabet of Sirach, going, what in the world is this text about? Yeah, I got you guys interested. Anyway, so what happens is that many people say this is an anti-Jewish satire. So it's trying to, it's the vaudeville, right, of Judaism, so to speak. But anyway, it could be a parody, right? It's very vulgar at times, kind of absurd at other times too. The text is pretty important because it does talk about the fact that she is the first wife. And I will read you the text. Soon afterwards, the young son of the king took ill, said Nebuchadnezzar. Heal my son. If you don't, I will kill you. Then Sarah immediately sat down and wrote an amulet with a holy name. And he inscribed on it the angels in charge of medicine by their names, forms, and images, and by their wings, hands, and feet. Nebuchadnezzar looked at the amulet. Who are these? The angels who are in charge of medicine. Senoi, Sansonoi, and Smerkalof. While God created Adam, who was alone, he said, it is not good for man to be alone. He created a woman from the earth, as he had created Adam himself, and called her Lilith. Adam and Lilith immediately began to fight. He said, I will not lie below. And he said, I will not lie beneath you, but only on top. For you are fit only to be in the bottom position, while I am to be in the superior one. So basically, it's about who's going to be on top or not. I'm serious. That's what the text says. Well, Lilith responded. She's very feisty in a good way. Okay. She says, we are equal. I love this. Can you believe this is being said around the 900s BCE? We are equal to each other inasmuch as we were both created from the earth. But they would not listen to one another. When Lilith saw this, she pronounced the ineffable name, and she flew away into the air. See these aspects of the Mesopotamian myth now, right? Flying away from the tree. Adam stood in prayer before his creator. Sovereign of the universe, he said, the woman you gave me has run away. Well, yeah, because you're a jerk. Sorry. Anyway, at once the Holy One, blessed be he, sent these three angels to bring her back. Said the Holy One to Adam, if she agrees to come back, what is made is good. If not, she must permit 100 of her children to die every day. What? Right? The angels left God and pursued Lilith, whom they overtook in the midst of the sea, in the mighty waters wherein the Egyptians were destined to drown. They told her God's word. She did not wish to return. The angel said, we shall drown you in the sea. She said, leave me. I was created only to cause sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth, and a female for 20 days. Well, why is she doing this? Well, he's got to lose 100 of her kids a day. Come on. You're getting this. I mean, she's already punished. So it's kind of like I'm getting back here, right? A little bit, well, quite a bit, right? When the angels heard Lilith's words, right, they insisted, as of course these angels would, that she goes back. And she wouldn't. But she swore to them by the name of the living and eternal God, whenever I see you or your names or the forms in the amulet, I will have no power over that infant. She also agreed to have 100 of her children die every day. Rather do have 100 children of her die every day than be with Adam. He's quite a cat. Anyway, accordingly, every day, 100 of her demons that came from her perished. But still, this amulet was believed to be powerful for those protecting their children. They could see how Lilith has gained some negotiation power here. She still is a free agent, independent agent. She can do whatever she wants to do, whether good or ill. She has that power. We move on to the Kabbalah, right? 1100 to 1300 CE. Wow. Hey, yeah, we're at the Kabbalah, finally. Thought we ever get there, right? Okay. She occupies the realm of shells known as Kluputh, right? And according to the area of the Kabbalic tree of life, she's the area known as Melkuth, or the kingdom. The light of God does not emanate directly here, but indirectly via God's creation, and can be viewed as representing the earth. More specifically, Malkuth is the material world, a place of sensual delights. Lilith resides here, and she seduces all those who are open to her to embrace this material existence and to enjoy its pleasures. She is depicted here as very beautiful to behold. In fact, she's mesmerizing. She's an enchantress, right? And so people, in fact, she looks like, one description shows her as a beautiful blue butterfly. Oh, okay. So what she does is that she wants us to, in a sense, embrace our bestial or natural urges and just to enjoy them in pleasure. By the 13th century, the Zohar, especially the Agadah, adds another story whereby Lilith leaves Adam after refusing his authority and gets together with Archangel Samuel after having sex with him. And that's the reason why she refuses to go back to the Garden of Eden. So she found somebody better, and that's Samael, right? The story of Lilith and Samael is complicated, but it can be put together through various works in the Kabbalah. According to the Jewish 13th century work known as the left hand emanation, one known as blind dragon actually arranges the marriage between Lilith and Samael, who is often specifically viewed as the dragon that is in the sea, also known as the Leviathan. So they get together. Lilith and Samael have sex via the blind dragon, which is understood as a snake, according to the left-hand emanation. So you already know the evil Samael and wicked Lilith are like a sexual pair who, by means of intermediary, receive an evil and wicked emanation from one and emanate to the other. The heavenly serpent is a blind prince, the image of the intermediary, sorry, my mouth, between Samael and Lilith. In the name is Tama-Eva. The master tradition said that just as this serpent slithers without eyes, so the serpent has the image of a spiritual form without color. These are the eyes. The traditionalists call it an eyeless creature, therefore its name is Tanan-Eber. He is the bond, the accompaniment, and the union between Samael and Lilith. If he were created whole in the fullness of his emanation, he would have destroyed the world in an instant. So, in fact, many associations, Lilith is also connected with the serpent. In fact, sometimes Lilith and Samael are both described as serpents. And then you can see where this is going. So what will happen is we get into the medieval context, and God castrates Samael to stop Lilith from giving birth to all these demon children. But you're also going to have the story where Lilith is now associated with the snake in the Garden of Eden. You saw this one coming, right? You can see that, again, by going in an evolutionary sense, you're seeing how these ideas start to emerge and they start to come together. Of course, the treatise of the left hand emanation also goes into the idea that they are both androgynous, ultimately, above all. But they are the counterbalance to Adam and Eve, or the evil Adam and Eve in the spiritual sense. Archangel Samuel, of course, appears in the Talmud first around 200 CE. He's known as the severity of God. He is the angel of death, so he is the ultimate bad boy. Right? There you have it again, right? Like in Lel, right? He has a voracious sexual appetite, and they mated with each other a lot, and had lots of demons, and so many demons come as a result of that. He is also known to interact with the angels of prostitution, and we have those as well. I'm looking at my time here. And so I'll just mention a few here. He interacts, for example, with Isaac, right? Who is in the realm of the shells, and who conceals the face of mercy, and the demons connected to her have black veiled heads with their hideous eyes peering through and horns, and are accompanied by evil centaurs. Yep. He also has a connection with Agrat Malat, known as the dancing roof demon. Gotta watch out for that one. Also, Nima, who happens to be a female companion of Lilith. So, quite a spread, so to speak. There's other versions of the story where she is connected to Asmodeus, as opposed to Samael. So there you have it. And of course, the Zohar goes into the fact that it's possible that Lilith will be redeemed. We don't have time to interact with that, but Lilith will ascend at a certain point. So you have that concept as well, and that she is originated, according to the Zohar, from the flames of the cherubim's swords. And so she is now having an angelic aspect to her. So again, she's not all bad, right? Of course, when we get to the keys of Solomon, Lilith may be a demonic counterpart to various stars. In fact, I will mention this. We're almost done, I know, but as you know, the cherubim are connected to various fixed stars of the constellations, each one designated to the stars, and Lilith stands guard. What? Lilith is actually a guard of a star known as Algol, a fixed star in the constellation of Taurus. This star is called Lilith star according to the Jewish legend. Interestingly enough, the same star is connected to the eye of Medusa that Perseus used to turn his enemies into stone, right? And the Algol talisman is considered good luck for success for petitions to be carried around and a ward against evil. So even already this far in, Lilith has negative, but she also has positive aspects as well. Well, as you see, eventually things are going to start to go downhill, where with the new moon, she is connected. Well, I will just kind of have to go through this because we ran out of time. I want to say a few things, more things, just if you don't mind. Give me a few more moments here. I will mention that we know that during the time of the new moon, Lilith toys with children, making them laugh. And this is the secret of the children laughing in their sleep when they are small. It is from Lilith who plays with them. And I heard that when a small child laughs during the Sabbath night or night of the new moon, it is because Lilith is playing with him. And it is well that his father or mother or anyone who sees him laugh should tap him in the nose with a finger and say, "Go from here, you accursed one, for you have no resting place here." Let him say this 3 times, and each time he recites this incantation, let him tap the child's nose. So there you have that. Give me about 5 more minutes. I will just mention a few other things because there's a few more stories I want to tell you so badly. Okay, so Lilith becomes a companion supposedly of Pope Sylvester II, a pope from 999 to 1003. They fell in love. So Lilith and he had a relationship, supposedly. Who says this? The English monk by the name of William of Malmesbury, who lived between, 1095 to 1143. The story goes is that the future Pope Sylvester, he was actually a sorcerer. He had special knowledge. I mean, he was really good at mathematics. Well, that explains everything, right? But he was also known to be a great philosopher, a magician, and he had some way of avoiding evil by hiding under bridges because it's a realm between the world above and the land below, which is kind of strange. In fact, nobody loved him. He just couldn't get a girl. I know, it's sad. He even fashioned a brazen head of bronze that was mechanical, that could say yes or no to various answers. I mean, that would win anybody over, right? Okay, so what happens is that he was lonely, rejected by everybody, especially the one woman he loved. And so he met Mara Diana. He met Mara Diana while walking in the woods near a church. He described her as an angel. She happened to be bathing in a nearby river. She was completely naked. And of course, he's a voyeur. Watch her for a while. She spotted him. The two meet. Temptation was too much to take. And then all of a sudden, he blanked out. This is what they all say. And he woke up in his bed, in his room, with her next to him. Okay. Mara Diana was very satisfied with the meal as a succubus, who is, of course, a Lilith. She announced that she knows of his little loneliness problem and could give him a hand in that under 2 conditions. One, he could never tell anyone that she was around, and also too, that he could not be with anybody else. But she could be with anybody else, but he couldn't. It's kind of exclusive. So, so she enjoyed her various meals with him. But then she actually starts to fall in love with him, and she doesn't go with anybody else. And the two are together, and she gives him lots of favors, and eventually helps him become pope. The story goes is that one time she was told she told him that he could not perform any mass in Jerusalem because the devil would get him, and so he canceled his pilgrimage. But he did perform mass at San Croce in Jerusalem, in Rome, and apparently that counted, even though it wasn't really Jerusalem. And she was attacked by a devil, tried to gouge out his eyes, cut off his hand and tongue, and admitted, probably before he cut off his tongue, that he had this succubus. All right, so we have, of course, now we're wrapping up here. We're ending things up. So there's going to be a revival. What? Yes, a revival of Lilith. She's going to be restored. Goethe starts that work a little bit, right? Faust, who's that there? Says Faust. Mephistopheles says, take a good look. Lilith. Lilith? Who is that? Mephistopheles says, Adam's wife, his first, beware of her. Her beauty's one boast is her dangerous hair. When Lilith winds it tight around young men, she doesn't soon let go of them again. And of course, another part here is that Faust is encouraged to dance with the pretty witch, and so it seems to be a very lovely time, a lovely dream. I dreamt one day I saw a green leaf apple tree, 2 apples swayed upon a stem, so tempting. I climbed up for them, a pretty witch, ever since the days of Eden. Apples have been man's desire. How overjoyed I am to think, sir, apples grow too in my garden. Then we have, of course, the famous painting by Rossetti, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and he wrote a nice poem. Now, this is how I'm going to conclude. Well, I'm going to conclude one more part. I'll do Browning real quick. I just want to do 2 more. Okay, so Rossetti goes as follows. It says, of Adam's first wife, Lilith it is told, the which he loved before the gift of Eve, that ere the snakes her sweet tongue could deceive, and her enchanted hair was the first gold. And still she sits, young while the earth is old, and subtly of herself contemplative, draws men to watch the bright web she can weave. The heart and body and life are in its hold. The rose and poppy are her flower, for where is he not found, O Lilith, whom shed scent and soft shed kisses and soft sleep shall snare? Lo, as that youth's eyes burned in thine, so went thy spell through him, and left his straight neck bent, around his heart one strangling golden hair. And finally, Robert Browning, in his poem that was published in 1883, known as Adam, Lilith, and Eve. Here, Eve admits that she never loved Adam, while Lilith confesses that she always loved him. As the worst of the venom lift my lips, I thought, if desire this lie, he strips the mask for my soul with a kiss. I crawl, his slave, soul, body, and all. And so you have the redemption of Lilith. She is brought back, she's re-empowered, and she becomes an image, a goddess again, who is understood to make her own choice. She has complete free will to do as she wishes, and she has the power of the knowledge and intuition to do so. I hope that you have understood all the labyrinth of the evolution that is Lilith, because I'll be honest, most scholars have been tricked by Lilith here and there, to and fro, because she defies description and full understanding, and sometimes she, in her way, is meant to be a mystery. And you know what? In this life, sometimes a mystery is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Yes. Sure.
I
Yeah,
have a
absolutely.
question I put in the chat.
Oh.
Just at the end. About the story of Lilith fleeing from Adam. Does that come from the Talmud, or where does that one come from?
Oh, okay. Okay, well, the Talmud talks about Lilith connecting with Adam. Connecting with Adam in the nocturnal emissions after he does the celibacy thing. So that's I'm seeing all these questions here. Wait, where is the question here? I'm kind of lost my thought here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. The one that I had was just, where does that story come from of her fleeing, basically, from Adam? With that really beautiful quote that you told us about.
Oh,
we're both from the earth.
yeah,
where did that come from?
Oh, yes. That's the Kabbalah. Yeah.
Thank you. That was all I wanted to know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I see lots of questions. Does a heart get changed each day for all three? The spell does not say. That means I would assume it just has to stay there. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, some other questions here.
I have a question regarding the Gilgamesh, and so what was the second creature that took root in the tree?
Are you talking about the bird?
I second that, yeah.
What type of bird was it?
Okay. So the bird. All right. A bird, but I want to make sure I got it right here. Hello, tree. Yeah, just give me a second, Sarah. I'm looking for you. Yeah, Anzu.
It's a what?
Anzu. Anzu. Anzu bird. So that's the idea that it's of the branches above, and of course the serpent is below, and it is the realm of the heavens or the air, and the realm of the earth, and of course it has a world trade concept.
I have a second question.
Sure.
What was the other two children after the god of death when she was traveling through the underworld?
Oh, okay. You mean the ones that I was rushing through?
Yeah.
I really like that story. It's really interesting. Okay. So we go. All right. Okay. So the names are. Oh, yeah. Of course, I translate them. So, but I'll give you the. Okay. So the names are. Okay. Nurgle. Next one is Ninazu. And the third is Nbelulu. I'll spell them out. Nurgle, Nrgal. Next one is Ninazu, Ninazu. I'm talking too long. Ninazu. And the third is Enbilulu, who is the inspector of canals.
So my question was, rather, instead of their names, what were they the gods of?
Okay, so the first one is the god of the entry gate into
The children.
the children.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what will happen is the first one becomes known as the gatekeeper. Second one will be known as the man of the river, and the third is the god of rivers and canals. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting story. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, you said earlier you said the owls weren't realistic. You said something wasn't realistic attached to her.
Yeah, okay. So yes, owls dwell within trees. And yes, owl is connected to her iconography. And I mean, I could see that. But having the word Lilith meaning owl, is kind of a stretch because it goes against the etymology of the word when it comes to ancient Sumerian, as well as when it amalgamates with Akkadian. You know, it doesn't mean owl. It means, we understood it, it means air.
Mm-hmm.
And then it amalgamates in the Akkadian, it connects to the realm, it means night or darkness. So to just say, hey, it's an owl, doesn't seem to be very responsible, even though owls are connected because they are of the night, right? They're air, and they
And
like
the air,
tree
yeah.
trunks, you know, they are air in that sense. So they have the attributes, so it makes them perfect to connect with Lilith, but not Lilith, the word.
Yeah,
Because the
the
word,
etymology, yeah.
the word goes against, and also the other understandings of that, because owl conception really is lost, but the air spirit demon aspect is what continues on with its name.
Yeah, you mentioned the feet were also part of the owl too.
Yeah, you have
Okay.
the claws. Yeah. So it's the iconography. So what it is that it's a chicken before the egg. You know, which comes first? But from my perspective, is that the owl represents the attributes, but doesn't mean it's an owl.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. The others.
What was the name of the star that you said is associated with Lilith?
Algol.
Algol, but it's in Taurus, it's not in Perseus?
Taurus.
And how is it spelled?
Algol.
Oh.
Algol. No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, if the Lilith is understood as being evil or problematic, why would she be connected to the power of the energy of the wings of a cherubim, not the wings, but the sword of a cherubim? Why would she be connected to a star that has magical properties? So you see that they don't have her figured out.
I always thought I read that Algol was connected to Medusa as opposed to, because it's losing one's head.
Yeah.
Pretty much the definition. Yeah.
It's a good connection.
But you said that it was also connected to her as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's according to the Kabbalah. Yeah, of all places. Yeah.
It's cool.
Any other questions?
Okay, there's a question in the chat from Michelle. She says, are there any sources that suggest people used to pray to Lilith to take a pregnancy baby away? Old school abortion-ish. Since she was in charge of killing babies, it would be, if you didn't want one, could you pray to her to have it taken away?
Okay, I'll say this. I don't see any evidence for that, but I believe that is very possible. The problem is that Lilith sometimes did more than abort the baby. It hurt the mother. That's the fear. So if Lilith went just too far, because remember, she is the one who, but what I didn't mention, now that we got a little bit more time, is sometimes Lilith was connected to making a woman unable to bear children. So that's another aspect. So she made them barren. So like herself. And so you had that association. So so she's connected to that. She's connected to pain of menstruation, unfortunately. So I mean, her whole thing is very strange in the sense that she is not about procreation, you know, for humanity. She's all about nature and its procreation, and those energies are to be used elsewhere. But I don't know how those priestesses are able to. I mean, there's probably possibilities they're not able to have children through their activities. You know, I mean, we probably can imagine a few ways that they achieved this, but I'm not sure if that would be all the ways. So
So
just a
in
thought.
working with her, I don't know if this, anything about working with her, but in working with her, would that make someone then infertile as an exchange, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily, but
Unless you're verbally sacrificing something,
Right.
I guess.
it would encourage you to be single. You know, there'd be, I mean, that's not really a joke. I don't know why I'm laughing. It
No. I
encourage-
mean, no, please tell me more, because
it-
that's
it-
interesting.
Right, no, it would encourage, because we find from the Mesopotamian as documents, which I actually mentioned and quoted,
Mhm.
that
Perpetual
Lilith,
maiden.
yeah, perpetual maiden. Yeah, you are to stay, not stay celibate. Have, you know, sex, you can
Oh
have
yeah,
all the
no,
sex
she
you
likes
want,
that. Yeah.
you know, and with multiple partners
Yeah.
in that sense, but
Yeah.
not when it comes to a committed relationship.
Hmm.
And in fact, even with her mentioned in the Kabbalah, what did she do? She, she goes away from Adam because she doesn't like the sexual position, but he's kind of a really not very nice about the whole thing.
Yeah.
He isn't. And so she goes off to Samael. But Samael, they meet like crazy. But she is also mating with other people, and he's mating with others. And just towards the end of my talk, I was rattling it off. Three of the demonesses he's mating with, and one of them is her best friend, her companion.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's non-exclusionary from that perspective.
Mm. So in
but-
working with her, she would encourage that, the kind of maiden aspect,
Well,
being single.
I guess the best way is she did encourage that.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not a critique or something problematic at all. Just that's what the history says, is that she encourages, that.
Mhm.
she and you can see where she goes against the marital conception, where so she's preserving this, but when it comes to marriage, it's like, hey, no
Mhm.
to procreation, no having kids. And however,
Yeah.
you did notice that she sometimes can be used to help kids and save kids. And I'm wondering what that
Mhm.
context is. And I'm wondering if that is out of, because remember, we talked about the story of Enlil, and they had the moon god outside of marriage, right?
Mhm.
Right from the beginning. So, I mean, and she made it with those all the way down, right? Each had a god. So it seems to be like, well, if you have a kid outside of, I'm not supporting or going against it. I'm just being honest. I mean, from that story, which I told in detail, it seems to say, well, procreation, if you have a kid and you're not married, maybe it goes well. And so maybe the anger is towards marriage. I don't know. It just like I said, that's the beauty of I like this talk a lot is I actually read the documents for you to hear it. So you have actually heard the documentation yourself, and you can discern from there what you think. But from what the evidence that you heard from the primary sources written at that time, it does seem to suggest that idea.
So even though it's kind of a dichotomy where she's procreated a bunch, but she doesn't really like that.
Yeah, but when
Okay.
it comes to the natural realm, where there's a parallel with Inanna, right? Where you have, the idea, of the king of various cities in Mesopotamia. He would go up into the temple, into the ziggurat, right, and go to the top, and they would have the hieros gamos, right? They'd have the holy marriage. In some cases, that was with Inanna in a spirit form. In some other cases, it was a priestess that was chosen from the city to be with the king for that procreative event, not meant for procreation in the womb, but meant for what? To strengthen his kingship, as well as to give this power of heaven and earth as mitigated by the king and to the realm around it. I mean, so it's fascinating. Or it would be his wife, who has Inanna within her. So you could see some of these parallels. That's why you could see that Inanna and Lilith, they one is, obviously Lilith is the handmaiden of Inanna. So you can see where this connection is also.
Interesting.
And Inanna is not really, you take a look, I did a talk a while ago on Inanna. She's not really into marriage either. You look at her, nope. So, yeah. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, there's another question in the chat from Ricky B. When did paganism start working with her, and is there any record of it?
When is you mean neo-paganism?
Yeah.
Talking about, I mean, obviously, that's how we understand. I mean, we have Lilith being very important all the way from the beginning as worshipped, right from the time of the ancient Sumerians and to the Neo-Babylonians. It just kind of gets a little rocky when we get to the Assyrians, new cult, right? But aspects of her still continue to thrive. Are you talking about the reinvigoration of her in the 19th and 20th centuries? Because Romanticism does revive her on many different levels. So I mean, I'm not sure of the context of that question, or are we talking about modern day paganism? Because I know,
yeah, I would say more
Dion
modern
Fortune
day.
goes
I
into
would
it.
say, yeah, more modern day. Like when, is there any record of it in anywhere that all of a sudden she just became this amazing, great goddess that paganism started to work with?
Yeah,
I mean, I understand the history, but when in this modern day did it really come to life?
Yeah, Dion Fortune. She lived from 1890 to 1946. British occultist. She's the one who said the Virgin Mary is reflected in Lilith, and she's the one who started to rehabilitate her. Lilith was shown as a succubus in Aleister Crowley's De Art Magica. So that's not and used in his chaos magical work. And so, yeah, based on a earlier German rite I have here, there is a ceremonial invocation to Lilith. Dark is she, but brilliant. Black are her wings, black on black. Her lips are red as rose, kissing all of the universes. She is Lilith, who leadeth forth the hordes of the abyss and leadeth man to liberation. She is the irresistible fulfiller of all lust, seer of desire. First of all woman was she. Lilith, not Eve, was the first. Her hand brings forth the revolution of the will and true freedom of the mind. She is Ki Siakil Lililaki, queen of the magic. Look on her lust and despair. Yeah, so I mean, there. Also, Charles Leland associated Aradia with Lilith. Aradia is Herodias, who is regarded in the Italian folklore as being associated with Diana as chief of witches. Gerald Gardner also worshipped her and saw her as prominent, as being a goddess that was personified by the priestess in various heavens. Also, Doreen Valente, right? Also cited her as an important goddess. So I guess, I hope that answers. I guess I did.
It goes on and
That's
on. Thank
that's her
you.
within modern paganism. Because when I say
Great,
hear
thank you.
paganism,
Sorry?
when I hear paganism, I think Greco-Roman paganism. So I go,
Oh,
I
no, I
go,
was thinking more modern day. Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah. I hope that answers your question. So
Totally, it does. Thank you.
yeah, so basically early 20th century, but I would definitely say Goethe and Romanticism really set that up. It empowered her in a poetic sense, and then of course the ritual ideas. I do want to give away something else. There is a version of Lilith that was worshipped in the Middle East and continued to be worshipped up until modern times, at least into the 20th century. So there's some documentation, but it died out apparently during the First World War or during the Ottoman end of the Ottoman period. So we had vestiges of this ancient worship that continued for a while. So that would be something for scholars to do more research. Any other questions? Yeah. Was this fun?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys
Yeah,
enjoyed it.